Welcome to this rock and roll face-off between Caifanes, The Police and U2. A face-to-face comparison and evaluation of the first 4 albums by The Police, U2 and Caifanes. The theme of this video, its focus, is to make an evaluation and comparison of the first 4 records, albums, compact discs of 3 rock groups. Of these, 2 of them put out records in English, The Police and U2, and the other in Spanish. The group or band in Spanish is Caifanes. The story behind my relationship with the albums of these 3 groups is and was very similar. I heard The Police for the first time on the radio when Roxanne came out, the first single from their first album. At that time I was in high school here in the United States, although back then I didn't pay much attention to that song. A little more than 2 years later when I heard the single, Don't Stand So Close to Me, from their third album, Zenyatta Mondatta, it was then that I bought that group's album. There is a curious relationship, for me, between The Police and how I became interested in the other group that sings in English, U2. It was when we were waiting in line to get into The Police's live performance here in San Diego, California. It was because as we were waiting there at that place and time that U2's third album, War, was played over and out some outdoor speakers in its entirety. To be honest, I don't know if I really heard it from the very first song or not, but after hearing those songs from that album, quickly recognizing 1 or 2 of the songs piqued my interest quite a bit, and soon after I bought that album and listened to it calmly and enthusiastically. In case you are interested in knowing more about that concert we were waiting to be let in and into, there were 2 supporting bands playing that same show. Oingo Boingo opened up, they were later followed by Madness and finally The Police. If you are curious about how Caifanes came into my life, it was when a friend, who was in my car, handed me a cassette tape which I'd never seen. Quickly after, I inserted it into the car's cassette player. I liked it immediately. It turned out to be Caifanes's album, Volumen Dos, LD Oblito. You might have noticed something peculiar and similar in the way I was introduced to these 3 bands' music albums, cassette tapes and or later CDs. What you will notice is that in all 3 cases I did not start following or listening to any of these 3 groups beginning with and or at the time their debut or first album recordings had become available. In the case of Caifanes it was after their second album had been out for a while. With U2 it was when their third album was out, same as it was with The Police. This comparison video includes my opinion on the individual musical talents of the musicians of these groups and or bands, and the melodic quality and tone of voice of their respective singers. All of this was based on what ended up in the original version that was recorded on all the discs participating in this comparison. In the case of The Police and U2 they were the same 3 and 4 main musicians, respectively, on each of the albums considered and used in this comparison. When it came to Caifanes, that was not the case, as their lineup had changed by their 4th album. It does not feature their original bass player and keyboard player. And now without any further delays, let's start with the topic of this video first: challenge and or rating. The thinking behind putting together this video is not to belittle the musical quality of Caifanes when comparing them with these 2 greats, giants in the world of music. Though they might not be so via the quality of their musical products, they are so, size-wise, as the number of sales of their albums seem to show and how popular they are globally because of it. My purpose, more than anything else, is to demonstrate that Caifanes's recordings are at the same level or at times perhaps just a bit lower than their English singing counterparts, but we will see, show a bit later what I mean by this. Musical talent must be appreciated, not only for the language that is the most popular in this genre of music and or songs, but for its intention, delivery and quality, as it relates to and or when it comes to this. Caifanes's original work is at the same level and or better than many of their contemporaries in any language. I can state this openly, as I've heard plenty of other bands in which it is quite difficult to detect any quality at all, much less originality, and this applies to the majority of English-voiced rock songs composed by these bands. Okay then, let's start with the first factor that I will consider, compare and analyze, which is the quality of each of the singers and musicians in each group. The first of these will be the front man, the visual focus of a rock band, which is of course the singer and/or vocalist. Then after which the guitarist, rhythm guitarist and/or lead guitar player will be analyzed, graded. Next will be the drummer, and finally this bit will end after his rhythm partner, the bassist, goes through the same evaluation process. Using as a basis for this comparison, is what each musician contributed to each song and each album. This was how I reached the following conclusions, opinions, and/or decisions. Singers, first on the list, Sting from the Police. Second, Bono of U2. Third, Saul Hernandez of Caifanes. First place, Sting. Second place, Bono. Third place, Saul Hernandez. This order of the three may be the most anticipated by mostly perhaps due to their fame and/or popularity. To be honest though, I prefer and like Saul's tone of voice over Bono's any day of the week. Guitarists, first, Andy Summers from The Police. Second, The Edge from U2. Third, Saul Hernandez, and fourth Alejandro Markovich, both from Caifanes. Among these four musicians, for me the best is Andy Summers, who covers several aspects in his playing including rhythm, lead and melodic guitar, which he does quite well in the recordings of the four albums here considered. Second place I would include both Saul and Markovich from Caifanes, and finally in third place The Edge. Drummers, first, Stuart Copeland of The Police. Second, Larry Mullen Jr. of U2. Third, Alfonso Andre from Caifanes. In this comparison it is easy to select the best among these three. First place, Stuart Copeland, who is considered one of the best and most influential drummers in rock. I agree with this consideration fully, as I am of a very similar opinion. Second place I give to Larry Mullen Jr. Third place, Alfonso Andre. Bassists, first, Sting from The Police. Second, Adam Clayton of U2. Third, Sabo Romo from Caifanes. As far as the bass is concerned, an instrument that I appreciate very much, since I played it for several years, the best player, for me, in this comparison is Sting. Second place goes to Sabo. Third place I give to Adam Clayton. In the previous comparisons I did not include Diego Herrera, keyboardist of Caifanes, since there is no one to compare him with in the other two groups. However, he was seriously considered for his contributions to the songs in which he participates. Explanation of the assigned numbers. The number under the song list of each album is the one that I assign to each one, number 1 being the best of the three, number 2 for second best, and the number 3 for third. Comparison of the first album of each of these groups. First album, The Police, Balandos d'Amour. First album, U2, Boy. First album, Caifanes, Caifanes Volume 1. As it relates to these first three albums just mentioned, all three are very good. Assigning them the first, second and third place, in the case of these first albums, was the most difficult challenge. Nonetheless, number 1 went to The Police for their album Outlandos d'Amour. Number 2 went to U2 for their album Boy, and number 3 went to Caifanes Volume 1. Second album, number 1 went to The Police and their album, Regata de Blanc. Number 2 went to Caifanes Volume 2 El Diablito. And number 3 went to U2 and their album October. Third album, number 1 went to The Police and their album, Zenyatta Mondata. Number 2 went to U2 and their album War, and number 3 went to Caifanes and their album El Silencio. Fourth album, number 1 went to The Police and their album, Ghost in the Machine. Number 2 went to Caifanes and their album El Nervio del Volcán, and number 3 went to U2 and their album The Unforgettable Fire. As to why I chose Caifanes' album as second in this segment, even though, to me, it does not truly or fully represent the original intent of the original core members, as 2 members had left the band by this point and as it is also my least favorite album, over U2's album was because I have come to realize how overproduced U2's 4th album is. It was not then, as it is now, obvious to see the first sign that fame had gone to their heads, as U2 thought they had gone up to the same level as the Beatles, which was not the case at all, for they were far, far below them then and even lower now. For me, the 4th album of each of the groups is my least favorite. Ghost in the Machine by the Police has 2 or 3 songs that are just not at the same level as previous compositions. As previously stated, U2's songs were completely overproduced and diluted of any great substance. In the case of Nervi-o del Volcan, Caifanes' album, gives me the impression that it was recorded out of a commitment to the record company. Although the songs are good, the absence of Sabo and Diego are very noticeable on the album. Personally, I don't like what Markovic did on guitar on that album. I find his playing very repetitive and loud and intrusive, as if he were competing with Saul's voice, trying to take the lead role in each composition. Well, that's all for now. If you liked this video, please recommend it, comment, and subscribe if you like.